In the early 90s, the anime studio GAINAX was in dire straits. Although it found success with Gunbuster and Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, directed by one of its co-founders, Hideaki Anno, its subsequent projects failed commercially, and the studio was kept afloat basically by hentai games. In these difficult times, Anno, suffering from deep depression, was pressured to put anything out. So, Anno aimed to create something completely new. And so he did, albeit clearly influenced by other works like Devilman, Space Runaway Ideon, and his own older works, as well as the many books and movies he had consumed. The end result was Neon Genesis Evangelion, an anime whose influence and meaning to the industry isn't hard to gauge, considering what a merchandising machine it has become, and considering how many series have copied its aesthetics, its deep and mysterious storyline, and its approach to characterization. The premise is this: the year is the faraway future of 2015. 15 years prior, a catastrophic event titled The Second Impact has wiped out half of the Earth's population and has deeply destabilized the weather and life as we know it. Now, the Earth is under attack again by mysterious, incredibly powerful beings dubbed the Angels. And the only way to stop them is to utilize gigantic biomechanical mechas called the Evangelions, piloted by mentally unstable teenagers. Honestly, saying it out loud, it's not a particularly great or even that original premise. If anything, it seems like a setup for a Monster of the Week type program where our young heroes kill a different monster in every episode. But the execution, the way the storyline is resolved, and the deep look into the show's characters is truly what makes Evangelion stand out, even in the year 2018 as we live in the post-Second Impact world. As I rewatched the show, I noticed how well it splits into 3 distinct parts. All these parts have a different tone, and all 3 go well with 3 phases, or maybe instead types, of depression. It's no secret that Hideaki Anno's depression was what partly inspired Neon Genesis Evangelion, but I'm by no means a mental health professional. Obviously take everything that I say with a grain of salt, as I can only speak with the little knowledge that I have and based on my own experiences. The first part, which contains episodes 1 through 7, is quite melancholy and slow-paced, episode 4 in particular. It chronicles the main character Shinji's apathy and how uncomfortable he is being an EVA pilot. And it conveys the feeling of grey emptiness, the feeling of being stuck in a rut. The second part, episodes 8 through 15, is an upswing in the depression for both Shinji and the series. The arrival of Kaji, and particularly Asuka, changes the dynamics of the show, and the story shifts focus a bit away from Shinji. He may still be uncomfortable with his duties, but his friendship with Toji and Kensuke, as well as his growing skill as a pilot, increase Shinji's confidence, which comes to a head in episode 16. The last part, episodes 16 to 26, represent another shift in tone. What little storyline was there is ditched in favor of a deep cut of the characters' psyches, as well as a steady breakdown of Shinji, Asuka, and others, a hop from one tragedy to the next. Towards the end, some characters fall into near catatonic states of depression, while others go into psychosis. I'm going to go over all the parts of the series, starting from part 1 in this video. If you want a comprehensive but general overview of the themes used in the series, Wisecrack's video on Evangelion is amazing. For me, I'll focus more on the story and the character details. In the first episode, the head of NERV, the organization behind the Evangelions, Gendo Ikari, invites his son, Shinji Ikari, to come to Tokyo 3. Around the same time, the third angel, Sakiel, attacks and overpowers the Japanese military. Picked up by NERV's head of operations, Misato Katsuragi, Shinji is delivered to NERV to confront his cold, strictly business father, seeing him for the first time in 3 years. Gendo essentially gives him the option to pilot the Evangelion Unit 1 or to leave in shame. And yes, this scene inspired so many goddamn memes, I'll just get this out of the way. Get in the robot, Shinji. No. Get in the robot. No. Look at this girl. Blech. Get in the robot, Shinji. Okay. The girl in question is Rey Ayanami, the first Evangelion pilot NERV had, and who has been severely injured in an experiment with her own Evangelion unit in a prior incident. Interestingly, Shinji has an apparition of Rey when he first arrives at Tokyo 3, but does not seem to remember it anymore after seeing Rey in person. Obviously, he had other things in mind. Watching this scene, I wonder if Gendo is just using Rei's vulnerable state to coax Shinji into piloting the Eva, knowing he inherited his mother Yui's empathetic and kind side. Or maybe he just knows Shinji is a 14-year-old boy and this is a chance to win some favors with a girl, I don't know. A lot of people complain about how annoying it is that Shinji is refusing to pilot the Eva and is whining, But let's take a look at Shinji's character. We know that he's lost his mother and has been away from his father for years and has lived with his teacher. From what we can tell as we get to know him, Shinji is a very withdrawn and timid person, often shutting himself from the outside world with his music player. Besides his depression and cripplingly low self-esteem, he also appears to suffer from hypersensitivity and a form of social anxiety disorder. Shinji wants to avoid conflict whenever possible, and though his time living with his teacher was apparently characterized as him just existing, it was also free of any struggle or pain. Considering his personality and his hostility towards his father, it makes sense Shinji would reject this plan. The second episode does a fantastic job in stripping away any heroism and glory there could be in fighting city-destroying monsters in a giant robot. It's a brutal, terrifying experience, and Shinji is way out of his league, as synchronizing with the Evangelion means feeling every blow the Evangelion feels. Before we see the conclusion of the battle, we get a sudden smash cut to Shinji on a hospital bed. The angel has been destroyed and the city has been saved, and we've been cock-teased out of a giant mecha battle, it seems. Misato, feeling sorry for Shinji, takes him to live with her. And at this point, let's have a look at Misato's character. We know she's just been relocated to Tokyo 3, and while a total professional at work, at home she's lazy, sloppy, and prefers instant meals and beer over proper food. Despite her bubbly exterior, Misato is in many ways just like Shinji. Both are afraid to let people close, but without others they also feel unfulfilled. Both yearn to be accepted, and as we later learn, both had difficult relationships with their fathers. Misato's apartment is home to some dramatic scenes later on, but for now there's a lot of goofy comic relief to be had there too. By the way, Misato might be my favorite character in the series, and she was my ultimate waifu when I was a kid. Only later, as Shinji is going to sleep, do we viewers see what truly happened in the fight against Sakiel. Eva Unit 1 goes berserk and brutally destroys the angel, being severely damaged in the process, with Shinji catching a glimpse of something definitely organic under the armor. Unit 1 working on its own, and an earlier scene of the mecha autonomically shielding Shinji hints there's more to the Evangelions than meets the eye, and Gendo seems to be the only one who knows what. Episodes 3 and 4 also form a kind of two-parter, albeit with a different plot in each. Episode 3 introduces Shinji's school and his classmates, Toji, Kensuke, and Hikari, the minor characters. We see the repercussions of a giant robot battle, as Toji's sister has been severely injured by the debris during the previous fight. Meanwhile, Shinji's days go by in complete apathy and depression, as he goes through the motions of training with his Evangelion, as well as in school, where he is outed as the pilot. Though his classmates become interested in Shinji, Toji is outraged and punches Shinji in the face later. "That's what you get for saving the city, bitch! Kapow!" Jokes aside, regardless of the big picture, I would also be outraged in Toji's situation, and I'm glad this show acknowledged the civilians at ground level, despite being about a world-shattering conflict. Later, the fourth angel, Shamshell, attacks, and Shinji has to fight again. Because Kensuke is a huge military nerd, he and Toji run out of their shelter, so Shinji has to pick them up in the Eva and shield them. Inside the entry plug, the two get to see firsthand just how much Shinji suffers in having to fight the angels, and Toji regrets his actions. In episode 4, Shinji's depression and anxiety comes to a head, and he decides to escape. This episode is the most melancholy and slow-paced of the series, and the only one not to be written, at least in part, by Anno himself. Honestly, it's probably one of the weaker episodes, yet I still like the beautiful aesthetics that make up for the sometimes limited animation. Shinji goes on the run, despite his mantra of "I mustn't run away," but without any place to go or anyone to count on, only ends up feeling emptier. On the countryside, he runs into Kensuke, who actually says he envies Shinji for piloting an Eva and living with a gorgeous woman. Nerve's goons come to pick Shinji up, and Shinji informs his father of his resignation and plans to go back to his teacher. However, running into Toji and Kensuke at the train station and hearing Toji's apology, Shinji finally breaks down, venting out his feelings of inadequacy as the men in black drag him to wait the train. Realizing what has happened, Misato storms to the train station thinking it's too late, only to see that Shinji didn't board the train after all. In another one of Eva's signature budget-saving tricks, holding on a still frame to increase the emotion of the scene, Shinji and Misato just stare at each other until Shinji weakly exclaims, Speaking of episode 4, it's titled Hedgehog's Dilemma, which is also discussed in episode 3. Wisecrack explained this in his video quite well, but essentially we humans yearn closeness and the warmth of others. At the same time, once we let people close, we allow ourselves to get hurt. The struggle in balancing these two is a key theme in Evangelion. Episodes 5 and 6 are more obviously a two-parter, focusing on the character of Rey Ayanami, who we only saw glimpses of before. Let's discuss Rey for a bit. A mysterious, quiet and seemingly emotionless girl with the unusual appearance of blue hair, red eyes and pale skin. Facts that somehow are never mentioned by anyone. Rey seems to have almost a type of schizoid personality disorder, as evidenced by her aloof demeanor and lack of interest in any sort of human contact. Unlike Shinji and Misato, Rey doesn't even want an intimate relationship of any kind. Well, that is except for her oddly close relationship with Gendo, and Gendo even returns the smile. Though we find out the reason why much later, for now it makes Shinji understandably upset. Shinji is fascinated by Rey, again for reasons we'll discuss in later videos, but at the same time Shinji's hatred of Gendo causes conflict between the two. When Shinji has to deliver Rey her keycard, we get a glimpse of her living conditions in a dark, dirty and a cluttered apartment, something Rey does not seem to mind. In a famous and absurd situation, Shinji ends up falling on top of a naked Rey, his hand landing on her boob. But while this could be a comic moment in other anime, in here it's presented as just awkward. Shinji's messy relationship with sexuality and his ongoing hormonal development and Rey's complete apathy and lack of reaction to the situation make the scene almost hard to watch. Anyway, the plot of these two episodes concern another angel attacking, one that takes Shinji out with one shot and begins penetrating into Nerve's headquarters with its enormous drill. Misato makes a plan to destroy the angel by taking power from the whole country and utilizing Shinji and Rey together. Shinji and Rey come to understand each other as they discuss their motivation for being EVA pilots, and in the end, after saving Shinji's life, Rey even gives a smile. Aww, look at that empty shell of a person. These two episodes are some of my favorites in this series. Shinji's painfully realistic clumsiness, the subtle showing of his trademark nervous hand tick, and Ritsuko stroking her hair as she talks about Gendo, foreshadowing here, all wonderful subtle touches. The design of the incomprehensible angel, a massive floating dodecahedron making heavenly choir noises equipped with a rather Freudian drill. Brilliant. Finally we have episode 7. Instead of angels, in this episode we have Jet Alone, a government-constructed robot meant to be a replacement for the Evangelions. The robot's constructor might be a huge douchey McGee, but he makes a good point about the pilot's mental anguish and the thousands dying of hunger as huge amounts of time, money and manpower are poured into Nerve's operations. While Misato and Ritsuko attend a demonstration for Jet Alone, the nuclear-powered robot goes berserk and a meltdown is imminent. But thanks to Misato bravely going in to defuse the situation, everything ends up a-okay. Except in the very end, it is implied that Ritsuko and Gendo set up Jet Alone's sabotage to ensure Nerve would keep its funding, painting a much darker image of our so-called heroes. This episode is kind of a turning point, showing character development in Shinji, who is much more comfortable with Misato and his friends. Also, did I mention that I really love Misato? Because goddamn, she's so fucking cool. There's a lot to discuss in Evangelion. I didn't touch on the Freudian concepts or the Judeo-Christian imagery too much, or the mysterious motivations of the angels, or the storyline in the background concerning a mysterious human instrumentality project, but those shall wait until next time. I didn't spoil that many things in this one, but for the next few episodes I'm expecting all of you to watch this show 3 times and submit me a written report on why this scene with Misato's titties is important. And by that I mean that the next ones will have spoilers. If you haven't watched this show yet and wondering if you should choose dub or sub, then I'd say both are great. The Japanese original is overall more polished and better acted and I kinda prefer it, but the dub has some really good voice actors like Spike Spencer, Tristan McAvery and especially Alison Keith. Thanks a lot for watching. It feels good to discuss a show that I love so much. These Evangelion videos won't get too much in the way of the other content. I release one every month from now on, going through the whole series, End of Evangelion, and perhaps even the rebuild movies. Until next time, so long, and thank you for all the support.